Hi, Anderson. How are you? How are you doing today?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Do you want to start off just explaining why we're chatting today and a bit about yourself?
Sure. Um, so Anderson Silver, that's it's actually my pen name. Let's
Oh.
start off with some honesty here. I live in Montreal in
Mhm.
Quebec, Canada. That's the French part of Canada.
Oh.
And I grew up, I'm your capitalist wet dream, right? I grew up at great grades in university. I got that. I'm a CPA. I'm an accountant. I got the great job. I had the six-figure salary, house, white picket fence, family, pet dogs, everything, right? And about once I accomplished everything I was told I'm supposed to accomplish in life, I kind of sat back one day and realized, well, now what? So when I recognized that there was this existential something missing, some type of hole missing that I couldn't fill with my career, my possessions, my whatever, I went on this quest to figure out, so why am I here? Seriously, like what are we doing here? Time's ticking.
Yeah.
My life's not unlimited. And that led me down this rabbit hole of Stoicism, which we'll get into later on. It's an ancient Greek philosophy, Greek Roman philosophy that spoke to me, and I went on this pilgrimage of studying Stoic philosophy, which then led to coaching others, teaching, mentoring others, which then led to, hey, there's enough interest out there. People ask me about this. Let me write a book. What the, YOLO, let's get a book out there. And then the book had so much success. Book number two, now book number three. Then there were podcasts, weekly articles. And here we are today. I've given up all the kind of materialistic pursuits for a spiritual quest to find tranquility and happiness.
Okay, brilliant. So can you talk me through the sort of beginning of this journey for you? I mean, what was it? Can you pinpoint a moment where your interest in Stoicism started, or was it a gradual process? I mean, was there an aha moment? How did it happen?
Sure, I'm laughing. It's not a fun story. I wish I had like a really cool story. Like I was on a mountaintop one day and I had this epiphany. No, unfortunately, I was on a vacation. I was down south in Cuba, and I got a bunch of books. What I liked doing on vacation was sit on the beach and read. And I went on Amazon and I just bought a bunch of books that came up on must reads. And one of them happened to be this book called Letters from a Stoic
Mhm.
by Seneca, written like 2,000 years ago. And I read this book, and that was my introduction to Stoicism. And then I was like, man, this stuff actually makes sense. And that's how I got into it. So a little serendipitous, nothing exciting, but that was my introduction.
Okay, so just an interest, and then you went along with it. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for people who don't know about Stoicism or are new to it, I mean, how would you describe it? How would you sum it up in simplistic terms, if that's possible?
So, when you hear the term philosophy, usually the initial reaction is like, oh man, philosophy, geez. Because we tend to associate it with this, modern academic study of things, and, very nitty gritty, which is great. But philosophy, another definition of it is, it used to be a guide for life, okay, before religion, when after the agricultural revolution, when human beings kind of started settling down and had time to sit around and think, they came up with uh, ideas on how to live. What do I do with my spare time? And so that's what philosophy was up until Christianity took over. And Christianity and Stoicism have an overlap as well. Maybe we'll cover it later on, which is interesting. A lot of Stoicism and Christianity, but no, I digress as I always do. So Stoicism is one of these ancient Greek philosophies that came up after the Socratic era, and it is if I can explain it in one sentence, it is a philosophy based on rational, just simplistic, intelligent thought to control our world as best as we can to find the happiness and tranquility.
Mm, okay, brilliant. So, in terms of your own journey and things like that, can you talk me through any sort of key points from your initial introduction into Stoicism and the moments along the way where you gradually started seeing change in yourself and your ways of thinking and how that came about?
I can't pinpoint, it's a journey. I can't pinpoint that one time that I was like, oh yeah, this is when
Oh
everything
yeah,
kind of fell in. But I see it every now and then, like the pandemic, for example, right now.
yeah,
Um, the conversations I have with people, um, the problems I see them running into, and then when I reflect myself at the end of the day on how I've dealt with my challenges, and we've had to deal with our share of challenges as well. I sometimes take a step back and I realize, wow, dude, like this is pretty cool. Like you don't. It's like growth, right? You don't realize when you see yourself every day. You don't realize how you've changed. But sometimes an event happens, and you recognize how much you've grown. Whether you want to call it emotional maturity, spiritual maturity, whatever you want to call it, on how you basically handle what life throws at you. And we do get thrown a lot of stuff, right?
yeah, yeah. No, of course, of course. So a gradual sort of process over time. And how long ago was this that this happened? When would you say it started for you?
Um, I would say I became a Stoic student in the past 5, 6 years. Like most people that I introduced to Stoicism, one thing I hear commonly is, "Oh wow, I had no idea. I used to do Stoic practices, and I wasn't even a Stoic." As we try and find some type of peace within our lives, we tend to do a lot of these things that's already in Stoicism. Why? Because again, it's very rational, it's very intelligent. In Eastern philosophy, we see overlaps with Stoicism. In religion, we see overlaps with Stoicism. So in our regular personal behavior, as we grow as individuals, you will see a lot of these things that Stoicism says, hey, consider doing it this way. So if I go back 10 years, I was already making changes when I first had that epiphany of, this is okay, this is great. I got, I did everything society told me to do, but I'm not happy yet. But officially becoming a student of Stoicism, like really practicing it, I'd say I have 5, 6 years.
5, 5, 6 years, brilliant. And at what point did you sort of turn the tables on your old life and move into this new one that you're living? And was that
Uh, again, that was very gradual. And I'm not, it's important to point out that I'm not, I'm still a CPA, I'm still an accountant. Like I haven't quit my job and gone on a pilgrimage into the wilderness. You know what I mean? It's not that type of, and I should take a moment to point out, I don't consider myself a Stoic. I consider myself a student of the school, the same way I'm a student of the Buddha Dharma, right? Buddha's teachings. I'm a student of science. I'm a student of philosophy in general. It's just Stoicism heavily dominates my thought process because it does make a lot of sense. With me, it resonates, right? We're different people. We come from different backgrounds. We know different things. And so different things will make sense to different people. For me, it was Stoicism. And that's what brought me to this kind of pilgrimage, this goal of spreading the word, because I recognize it does make sense with a lot of other people out there as well. So let me try and get the conversation going. And that's the whole goal behind the creation of Anderson Silver.
okay, fantastic. So I'm really interested in learning about your mentorship as well and how you help people. At what point do you find people come to you with interest in pursuing this? Does it tend to be people who are maybe anxious or struggling and things like that? What sort of clientele do you deal with?
Okay, so almost inevitably, it's when people are going through some type of spiritual crisis, right? People don't come off the street who are happy and be like, "Hey, how can I be happier?" Usually, it's kind of like, "Man, I can't deal with this anymore. What do I do?" And in the mentorship, it's not like I don't have business cards out there like, "Hey, having an existential crisis, call this guy." Like, no, it started off with my wife, who's on this journey with me as well, kids, friends. And then when the advice kind of struck a chord with people, they kept coming back. And through the circle of friends, I kind of became that guy, like that people came for advice. Like, yeah, you're probably too young for this, but there was a show called Tool Time with a Mr. Wilson on the other side of a fence that the protagonist of the story, Tim Allen, would go to seek advice from. I was kind of like that guy. People came for advice. And my wheelhouse of advice really wasn't that big. It's we like to think we're these complex beings, but at the end of the day, we're pretty simple animals. So and that's when 3 years ago I decided, let me get a book out there, and then from there it really grew into this whole whole beast. Like I'm floored by how many questions I get. I do weekly group discussions on Reddit. I'm on Twitter answering questions. I have my podcast when people reach out to me to ask questions about. I consistently get messages from people or handwritten letters, which is so cool,
Oh,
who read my book. Yeah, and
yeah.
this is what drives me. It's that one person, and that's always my goal, right? If I can just help one person
Yeah.
change their life, well, all of this would have been worth it, right? And it's those messages I get, like, man, this, thank you so much. I felt like you wrote the book to me. You wouldn't believe how many times I hear the words, I felt like this was written for me. And when I read Stoicism, certain books, I felt the same way. I'm like, I feel like they were in my head writing this for me. It makes so much sense. And that's what really drives me. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So your first book, was that Stoicism for a Better Life? Was that the first one that you wrote?
So Stoicism for a Better Life is the brand I created. The first book was, I have it here, might as well plug it in. So it was this one here, Your User's Manual.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be a one-off book. It was just a short kind of under 100 pages. Here's my philosophy. It's not a Stoic book, heavily predominated by Stoicism again, but it's more my philosophy. In fact, these are excerpts from my own personal journal. Which I massage, so it's more for the reader. It says, you instead of me, but whatever. And it was really just to kind of write a book. That's all it was. The second one, when it got a lot of attention, and then I decided to write a 3-book series, and I decided to have the weekly articles and the podcasts and stuff. That's when I thought, okay, let me have like a brand, if I can call it that, more like an umbrella that all of these live under. So yeah, I work under the umbrella Stoicism for a Better Life, and so it's easier for people to find. Really, that's all it is.
Okay, brilliant. And what can you discuss maybe a few of the practices that people can sort of begin with, and the ways of sort of thinking behind Stoicism for everyday life? And I know that's probably quite a big question to ask. But,
yeah, that's a little broad. It would be hard to say, hey, do this and you'll be a Stoic, and actually it brings up another point. Unfortunately, Stoicism has gotten a lot of bad publicity in recent times. So in the past 50 years, Stoicism has had a huge resurgence, right? And in the 1970s, a couple of psychologists used Stoicism to create the cognitive behavioral therapy method, which is still used today. And since then, it's kind of been finding a resurgence, and it never disappeared since 2,000 years ago. It's just finding a resurgence. In recent times, it's kind of been associated with a macho tough guy, I don't feel no feelings, and walk through life with a stiff upper lip without feeling any emotions type of vibe. It's been associated with a lot of toxic masculinity. So a part of what I do also is to educate people to say, no, it's not about being just a tough guy and not feeling feelings. We're human beings. We feel feelings. There's no going around that, right? We're anxious beings. We feel anxiety. It's going to happen. It's how you deal with it. And so, if anyone's interested in particular exercises, my entire Stoicism for a Better Life is built around that. The weekly articles, the podcast, they're each one little exercise you can do. At a very high level, the goal essentially is to disassociate the body from the mind, okay? Because we have this animal mind, this primitive animal mind, right? We are predominantly hairless monkeys after all, but we also have this very intelligent, rational mind. And the whole idea behind Stoicism is to try and tap into that rational mind. So there's one thing I would suggest for people to do. The first thing I always suggest is journaling. Journaling is what a Stoic would call meditation, right? When we say the words meditation, usually we think of the kind of, you sit down Zen with some incense and stuff. And that's more the Buddhist meditation style. What we call meditation is our journaling, checking in with yourself. Why? Because when you put pen to paper, the way the brain works, however it works, I'm not a neuroscientist, but you can write something down, and when you actually write, And it doesn't work on a keyboard. It really works with a pen on paper. You more often than not tend to engage your intelligent mind. You can't write with your autopilot, right? You can't write just right. You can scribble without thinking, but you can't write without thinking. And so when you write on a piece of paper, you engage your intelligent, rational mind. And when you go through your daily ideas, challenges, feelings, whatever it is, decisions you have to make, if you write it down, you tend to make more rational, more clear, more intelligent decisions. So if there's one thing I would suggest for people to do, it would be that: journal, talk to yourself, not once a day, man, multiple times a day. That would be a big help.
Okay, brilliant. There was a podcast I was listening to that you were a guest on, and there was one thing that you said that really struck me that I wanted to bring up on here as well, because I do think it's really helpful for people to hear. Like when you said it, I was like, oh, like it's quite a comforting thought. But you were talking about anxiety and how it's something that's built into us as humans, like way back, like cavemen. It's like our instincts telling us, trying to warn us about things, and it's like a natural human feeling. I thought that was a great thing to hear, because I think in this sort of day and age, there's a lot of people that feel anxious, and then they think, oh, I'm weird for feeling anxious, or this is strange, or this isn't natural. And I think, like addressing that misconception that it's a really not natural thing to happen, there's something wrong with you to feel that way, is quite important. Would you care to go into that a little more?
Sure. And I think it's an important point. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to take 10 minutes here to really explain this properly.
Oh, yeah. Go
So I guess before we even get into that, the first thing to point out is the mind-body duality. It's a very important concept, core concept in not just Stoicism, but a lot of philosophies, okay? So Sammi, indulge me if you will. Have you heard the story of the ship of Theseus on that episode? No. Okay. So the ship of Theseus is a mental exercise, and I'm going to digress again. In brackets, mental exercises is what philosophers use to study ideas. Okay, in science, in physics, and chemistry, you use the scientific method to do an experiment and record the results. In philosophy, because your thought process is much broader and your time frame and horizon is much wider, you do mental exercises to prove points to yourself. Okay, so ship of Theseus is a mental exercise that simply proves, in my opinion, any atheist wrong. Okay, it proves that there is more to us than just the physical body. Okay, so Theseus was the mythical guy that created Athens, right? He fought the Titans with this awesome battleship he had, won the battles, created Athens. Theseus dies. The people of Athens decide, look, we should keep this ship pristine for posterity, so that our kids and grandkids, they can visit the ship. So they keep it in the harbor as a museum, if you will. And one day, one of the boards rots, and someone says, oh, let me replace this board. So they remove this plank from the deck. They put a new one in, same shape, okay, same purpose, same wood, but it's a new piece of wood. The old one is now off in garbage. Is this still the ship of Theseus, or is it not, right? If it's one plank, you're going to say probably, yeah, right? So let's say a few more planks get replaced. Is it still the ship of Theseus? Sure. But then you replace, some sails get old, some ropes get old. So you start replacing the sails and the rope and all of this. Is it still the ship of Theseus, even though half the ship has been replaced? Then let's assume the entire ship, piece by piece. And remember, every piece is replaced in the exact same way. Let's say the entire ship gets replaced with new materials. Is it still the ship of Theseus? And that's a question, isn't it?
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then consider this. So imagine this whole time someone's been collecting all these garbage pieces that were rotten, and on land recreated that same ship with all it can't float anymore, right? But recreated the ship of Theseus on land with all these old rotten pieces. So now, which one's the ship of Theseus? The one in the harbor? The one on land? Do you have two ships of Theseus, or do you have none? So this is what I love about philosophy, man. It's questions, they don't have any right answers. But here's the reason I'm discussing this. Sammi, yourself, you're a human being. You look in the mirror and you see yourself and you say, "This is Sammi," right?
Mhm.
Let's say one day, God forbid, you have a horrific accident and you've lost both arms.
Mhm.
Are you still Sammi?
Yeah.
Right. Let's say you have another horrific accident because you just have terrible luck. Now you've lost your legs and your arms. Are you still Sammi?
Yeah.
All right. And if you go blind, you still Sammi?
Mhm. Yeah.
Which means,
Mhm.
by your definition, Sammi has nothing to do with the body in
Mhm.
which Sammi exists. And that's the point of this whole
That's an
exercise, is to
excellent
show,
point. That's
right.
brilliant.
And
That's
so this is what the mind-body duality is. Okay, in philosophy, most philosophers agree there is the body and the mind that are two separate things. Okay,
Mhm.
now this mind we can refer to as consciousness, spirit, soul, whatever you want to call it. In my second book, I call it tomatoes, right? Because the whole point is it doesn't matter what it's called, and so call it a spirit. And spirituality would be the if spirituality is the excuse me, the process of strengthening that inner person, then we can call the mind a tomato, and tomatoism would be strengthening our inner person, right? I'm being facetious here, but the whole point is there's something more. Okay, so let's call it a consciousness, a term we can all agree on. And this is where I prove I used to be an atheist, and this is where I kind of diverged from that. No, there's something more than the physical. Yes, the body's going to be worm food. No, I don't believe that my soul is going to ascend to an afterlife and with a halo and wings one day. But there is something in that middle ground. I don't know what it is, but there's something more. Okay, I'm getting to the anxiety part now.
Okay.
So if we have this duality, okay, let's put the mind aside for a second and let's look at the body. I said this just earlier. What are we? We're predominantly hairless bipedal monkeys. Okay, we are.
Mhm.
And if we go back and look at evolution, um, the earliest record of a defense mechanism that we have on fossil record goes back about 550 million years. Okay, and defense mechanism for sure existed before then, but anyways, so for the past 500 million years, evolution has caused life to become better predators and therefore have better defense mechanism. And it was just a cold war of escalation of arms. Okay, and we're a result of this. Let's use an example from more recent times. Let's say your great grandfather and another dude are standing in the savannah, East Africa, right? They're just chilling there, enjoying the sun. They picked all the berries they could, tummy's full, just relaxing. And then they hear a little rumbling in the bush. Okay, now one of those guys goes, "Hey, there's a noise here. I wonder what this is. Let me turn around and investigate." Right? Has a very intelligent response. The other one goes, "Oh, bleep, I heard something. Let's get out of here." Okay. The one who got out of there survived long enough to pass on his genes. The one that was like, let me explore what's happening in these bushes over here, got eaten by the lion that was stalking them. Okay. And so the one that was more jittery, more anxious, that had a better defense mechanism, built-in defense mechanism, survived and passed on their genes. This is just one example, and it's simplifying here. But emotions, our pessimism, our anxiety, these are all survival mechanisms that are built into the body. And this is why we all feel it. Every single one of us feel it. Okay. Another defense mechanism, if we were in the same room, okay, I don't know you, we've never met, we're only talking for the first time today, right? But
Yeah.
I know for a fact, if we were in the same room and I threw a ball at you, you would flinch like this, right?
Yeah.
And everybody does that. Why is that? We didn't go through a boot camp when we were kids to be like, all right, guys, if something gets thrown at you, make sure you flinch like this, okay? No, we weren't taught this. We just do it instinctively. Why? Because our arms we use as shields to protect our vital organs, right? Your heart and your lungs, because you can take a hit below the ribs, but you protect your vital organs like this in the same way. If something were coming at your face, you would turn your head and, probably close your eyes to protect your eyes. Defense mechanisms built in to your genetics, into your DNA. And so it's important to anthropologically understand where anxiety and pessimism comes from. You know, pessimism, we see that as such a negative term today, right? Who says pessimism is awesome, right? Everyone hates pessimism, right?
Mhm.
So back in the day, even a more recent example, we'll go back only 1,000 years. The guy that was a little bit more paranoid about wintertime and threw in an extra bag of grain in the attic for that winter survived the freak winter that was a little too cold, while the other ones died off, and he passed on his genes. Pessimism, anxiety, all of these things are built in survival mechanisms. Now, why are they causing so many problems today? Because in the modern ages, we no longer need these. We no longer need these survival mechanisms. Yes, there's still famine around the world, but historically speaking, this is the best time we've lived in ever in terms of surplus, right? Now we actually have the opposite effect. We're dying from obesity and eating too much. In terms of being afraid of, being eaten or stabbed, no one dies from, being eaten by, okay, there's like the odd one guy in Florida, but no one dies from being eaten by wild animals anymore. You know what I mean? So all these defense mechanisms, emotions, they're no longer necessary in our modern day and age. And that's where these afflictions come from. Uh, and so it's important to understand we're normal to feel these things. You can't not feel these things because they are built into this body, this vessel we exist in. So why hate yourself? Why be angry or upset with yourself on top of already having the anxiety? Just step one, accept this is normal behavior. And then step two becomes, all right, let me now tap into my mind and not respond with my body.
Mhm.
I hope that explains it.
It does. It does. It's fantastic, and I really do think it's a very comforting thing to hear for people who do have
Right.
anxiety and struggle with it. I mean, I struggle with it from time to time, and it's like if a doctor had told me this comes from, back in this is survival instinct, this is built in, if that was something that's explained to you initially, I think it's there's not like some mad illness wrong with me. Like this is
Yeah.
something that's actually like built in. I do just think it makes a big difference to understand the true origins of where it comes from and why it's normal and it's okay to feel like that, and then look at the ways to
Yeah.
manage it and improve it, and rather than be scared of it. Because I do think a lot of the time you can get stuck in a trap of being anxious about getting anxious, like worrying about feeling anxious, and you just get stuck in this vicious cycle. So I think by acknowledging that it's a normal response and by saying, okay, this is going to happen, how do I deal with it, it puts you in a much better position to accept it and then get on with it. So
Absolutely.
I think that's very helpful.
And this brings me back to the, rational approach of Stoicism. Like, let's accept what is. Yes, I'm a monkey. Yes, the monkey has emotions. I get it. It's cool, but let's try and deal with it. It's very simple, down to earth. And that's what spoke to me about it as well. And incidentally, in my second book, I spend like a third of it talking about all of this stuff. Because step one, to your point, people have to recognize that, hey, I'm not broken.
Mm-hmm.
Normal. And then we can work on how to fix it or deal with it. You can't fix it. Sorry, fix it is the wrong term. You cannot fix it. There's no changing evolution, but we can learn to deal with it.
Yeah, brilliant. And I'd be keen to know your thoughts as well. What sort of impact do you think social media has on anxiety and things like that these days? Because I do see sort of two sides to the coin. I see a lot of people be more vocal about mental health and wanting to raise awareness about it. But then on the flip side of that, you do see a lot of people putting up this sort of facade online of, oh, life is perfect, and giving sort of unrealistic expectations to the world of how things should be and how happy they are. So there's two sides to it. There's raising more awareness about it, but then there's also the facade that's out there as well. I mean, what's your thoughts on everything?
Sure. I mean, I think it's a double-edged sword, like you said it. I think it does, sadly, more damage than good, and I stay off of social media unless it's to connect with people for specific reasons. So it raises a lot more awareness. That's a great thing. It helps people connect. I mean, look at what we're doing now. This is awesome. We're across the freaking ocean. You know what I mean? Like, this is cool. All these podcasting things, my podcast, I was just looking up, thousands of people around the world are listening to my voice because they can. I mean, it's free, it's easy, you just on your phone, it's awesome. So technology and social media definitely has a lot of great stuff. uh, uh, Unfortunately, a lot of negativity because of the way it's been used, but that goes with every other technological innovation we've ever had as a species. It always inevitably ends up getting used for the worst possible things. uh, and social media, the majority of people use it for attention. Look at what I got, showing off. But worst of all, living in superficial, superfluous, pretentious world. And one of the things, so Stoics are ancient cousins, are the Cynics, and the Cynics were known to vehemently reject everything about society, like everything about society. If you want to be a cynic back in the day, you literally gave up everything except a robe to cover your shame and a stick to help you walk. And then you would, beg for food and just, walk the streets. You were homeless, essentially. That was what being a cynic was, to protest society, because society, this superfluous structure we have, this order we've put, it's all kind of fake if you think about it. We've all just kind of agreed, okay, this is the way it's going to work, but it's a fake construct. Social media just brings that to a whole nother level. People are posting like the best possible looks of themselves to the world, and the damage is, yeah, there's other people that are seeing this and saying, man, my life is not as good as this, it sucks. There's that part of it, but to me the bigger damage is on the people actually posting it, because in their minds they're living in that awesomeness, eh, eh, when in reality they're not in that awesomeness. So everything less just seems like, oh, my life sucks so bad, I hate this, why can I be on the beach in Bora Bora or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think people get more the the pursuit. It's less about the pursuit of feeling at peace and feeling truly happy, and more about the pursuit of appearing to be so. People are more concerned with looking like they're happy than actually trying to find it. Like the energy's misdirected in the wrong place. And I agree with you. I think that's probably the biggest damage, is that people aren't in touch or self-aware with themselves, or honest with themselves. And I don't know, it's like everyone's living.
Sorry to interrupt again. This is part of the survival mechanism. Like obesity too falls into this. We're talking about how we eat too much now, right? It's because instinctively we want to absorb those carbs. It's just now we have more access to these deep fried, delicious, awesome carbs. So we keep shoving our faces with it, and we've gone, the pendulum's gone full swing on the other side. Same thing with social media and living in this pretentious world. First, we wanted safety, right? I don't want to be eaten by a lion while I'm just sitting having dinner, but safety on steroids is comfort. So then we had the couch in the living room with the giant TV, because that's, safety on steroids. I'm super safe. It's so much so that I'm comfortable. And then now social media has brought that to, safety quintupled. I don't even have to live in the real world. My mind could be in like the Matrix kind of, living in this completely other imaginary awesome place. And I can ignore all this other stuff that's actually happening in my real world. So it's a continuation of our survival instincts, having way too much access to time, resources, being able to just hop onto the social media platform and start posting it. It's easy, it's accessible, it's doable. And unless you make the effort to combat that and stay in your objective reality with your rational, intelligent mind, it's very easy to fall into that world. Gaming falls into this category too. People lose themselves in gaming because you have the sense of accomplishment and living and awesomeness in this virtual world. And meanwhile, the corporations are taking up on this because they didn't create this. They've realized the niche where they can sell us these products. Exactly. So it's, it's not people's faults. It's built in again.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And as well with that, I might be going a bit too offbeat here, but do you think that sort of links in with like addiction issues and things like that as well?
Oh
Is it
yeah,
our human nature? Like if we've got access to something, we're going to consume it excessively. Is
exactly.
like a similar sort of pattern that you were getting at?
Exactly, hit the nail on the head. That's what it is. And again, I don't want to oversimplify. There's serious diseases and illnesses out there, mental illnesses. Um, I'm not undermining mental health aware. In fact, I'm a champion of mental health awareness. But a great majority of our problems really do stem from having access to too many things,
Mhm.
and then falling down this path of bad behavior that gives us a sense of reward, like the hedonic treadmill,
Mhm.
and that's what it is. No one is born to be an addict or living in a subjective reality or whatever. We're just animals, man, trying to live a happy, pain-free life, and we all find a different path. And so, what Stoicism does, it tries to bring you to your objective, real life as much as possible, because we can never really be there. Everything is still going to be subjective.
Mhm. Yeah, and what would you say in terms of stoicism and things? What are the hardest parts, do you think, to come to grips with about stoicism? What are the main challenges you see from maybe people you're mentoring and things like that, trying to sort of apply this?
Good question. I don't think the main challenges have anything to do with the ideas. The ideas always make sense. They're simple, they're straightforward. No one's ever been like, I don't know about that. I think the real problem is it's a real solution, which means it's not quick, it's not permanent. You can't do something once and then expect it to happen for the rest of your life. It's like exercising. If you want to be a fit person and you go to the gym and you pick up weights and put them down every day, you look fantastic. But if you stop, what happens? You're okay for a little bit, but progressively you get, you know, back to your old natural body. In the same way, as we work, first of all, it's hard to progress. It takes time, and taking off too, just like anything else. When you're trying to learn something, at first there's almost like no return. You're like, well, I'm doing all this work, I can't feel anything different, right? So the returns are slow, and then they slowly pick up, and as they pick up, we have to continue working towards it. We have to continue strengthening our, excuse me, what the Stoics call the prohairesis, which is our consciousness or faculty of judgment, whatever you want to call it. So it's more that kind of low return for high effort that's a challenge, because we live in a time now which is everything we want is like high return for low effort. We want instant gratification. We want everything without having to work for it. That would be the biggest challenge. The good thing is, usually when people have come to the point of looking for answers, they're ready. They're ready to put in the work. They're not afraid of putting in the work. They're just looking for answers. So personally, that was my experience, and usually from what I see, of course, you always have people that are all gung ho for like a week and then disappear, and they'll come back 2 months later, like, I'm going to do it this time, and then they disappear. But for the most part, because it makes sense, people kind of stick with it, and
Mhm.
one does work through the challenges.
Okay. One thing I'm quite interested in, I'll do my best to articulate this, but this is quite a tricky question, I feel. Um,
Okay.
a lot of people can talk the talk, but not actually walk the walk. And I suppose what I'm getting at there is, I do feel like you can teach people sort of anything if they're willing to listen. Like stoicism, reading the ideas, that can resonate with a lot of people. But what do you think is the key factor between reading it and understanding it, and then actually taking it on board and practicing it? What's that sort of midpoint? Is it a quality in someone? Is it what makes it click rather than just an acknowledgement? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Sammy. And that's a great question. And here's another reason. There's like three key reasons why Stoicism resonated with me, and we've covered most of it, but one.
Mhm.
And now you're asking the other question. Stoicism is a practical philosophy,
Mhm.
meaning
Mhm.
you don't practice it by memorizing quotes. You don't practice it by reading a book. You're not a Stoic just because you can say, blah, 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 blah said 2000 years ago, thou shalt art thou something, something. No, it's a practical philosophy, meaning you do Stoicism, if I can say that, by actually doing it in real life, by actually practicing it in real life. And because we're so focused on the present moment, we didn't really cover that, but another part of Stoicism is, some people call this mindfulness. For us, it's, the past is the past, future is unknown. The only thing we have is the right here, right now. And so we're absolutely focused on the right here, right now. One's life is a continuous sequence of present moments. There's nothing, the conversation we had 30 seconds ago, it's already gone. So I could have been like the rudest, jerkiest guy 30 seconds ago, but I can choose to be the best, most virtuous guy right now. Does it make up for my past behavior? No, not really. But I have the choice to be the best me right now. So that's the kind of approach we have. It's right here, right now. And so when one does Stoicism, when one practices Stoicism, it's all about applying it as best as you can, as rationally as you can, using your intelligent mind as much as you can in this present moment. And the beauty of that is the present moment is an end to itself. Okay. There's no, it's a 5-year plan. No such thing exists. We live with the constant thought of death is around the corner. So one thing in Stoicism is death is a very predominant idea. Okay. I'm right-handed. Okay. So everything I do, I usually do with my right hand. And literally on the inside, I have memento mori written, which is remember death. Okay. Now, this is not because we have some type of sick morbid sense of humor. Okay. The idea behind this is to recognize and remember, truly recognize, because everyone knows, yeah, we're going to die, but we don't really accept that, do we? We live as if we're going to be alive for 10,000 years, right? We're always like, I'll do that later or next year or whatever. We always have a future in our minds. Whereas with us, we try to recognize it might end today. It literally might end in an hour. So I want to make sure in this conversation I have with Sammi, I talk to you with as much honesty and transparency as possible. I want to get as much knowledge as I can, because you deserve my time. My time deserves that. You deserve that. Your listeners deserve that. And this is what a good human being would do right here, right now, because I don't know if there'll be a future. And so that's the main idea behind Stoicism. That's how you make sure you actually have changes, because it happens right now and it ends right now. And then we move on to the next one. So there's no other way about it.
Okay, so constantly staying in the present and remembering death when you're talking about that and using that to apply the right decisions and make choices. Is it from, a lot of people say, oh, well, I could die tomorrow, so let's live wildly today and to the fullest today. Is it getting at that, or is it more the midway point of, oh, well, we might die tomorrow, so let's be as nice as possible and as good as possible? Do you get what I mean? There's
Absolutely.
an extreme side to that too.
Absolutely. So here it is. There's a huge Grand Canyon size difference between living for the moment and living in the moment. Okay. Living for the moment is, YOLO, let's go do this and do that and living in the moment is being present, is being rational in the moment. So if I'm rational in the moment, even though I know I might literally die in 5 minutes, I don't want to go bungee jumping right now, eating 2 tacos and making TikTok shows so people can, that doesn't interest me. I still want to leave the biggest impact I can and help as many people as I can. So this conversation is the most important thing to me, regardless of whether I'm dying in 5 minutes or 50 years. Okay. So that's the big difference between living in the moment and living for the moment. And we try to live in the moment. It's that mindfulness, that presence of mind right here, right now. Life is not about quantity. Life is about quality. It's like friendships or any relationships. It's not about getting as much done as possible or living as long as possible. I want to live as best as I can, because everything else is out of my control anyway. So is wilding out because life is so short really the best way to live? Is that my definition of good? No. Being the most virtuous person I can be, that's my definition of good. And virtue, by the way, for a Stoic is working for the betterment of humanity, right? Because what else is my time really worth?
Brilliant. One thing I've heard a lot of successful people talk about, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, is the sort of strive. People set a particular goal in their mind for the future, and it's just what you were saying about being present. I thought links into this quite well. People will set like a specific goal for the future, and then when they achieve that, they often get quite burnt out because there's no, like, people are expecting like a big weight to be lifted when they achieve something that they've been working towards, but it's just more like, what's next? I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think people are too focused on, I need to do this in 5 years' time, and then when they get it, they're just let down because they have nothing left? I mean, what's your thoughts? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so goals are, no, let me back up here. This is an important question. I want to take a few minutes to put into context.
That's okay. That's okay. Take your time.
So, we spoke about the mind-body duality. Mm-hmm. Okay, the body is not in my control. Okay, I can try and influence it, but it's not in my control. I can't control my emotions that flare up. Okay, if my body has run its course and decides to have a heart attack, it's done. I can't control that. Okay, so I can influence my body. I can choose to move my arms up around right now. Great, but I don't have 100% control over its outcomes. Right? I do have 100% control over the outcome of my thoughts. However, nothing can get inside my squishy bits here and tell me what to think, no matter what's happening. Okay, so because time is so short, I want to focus my energy, my resources, and what's my most precious resource? It's time. So I want to focus my time on what I have control over the most. Incidentally, the title of my third book is Control Your Dichotomy of Control. Control your world for an anxiety-free and happy life. Okay, but the whole premise of the book is I'm trying to point out what our world is and what we can control. And once you figure out what you can control, focus on it. And so if we get back to the topic at hand, I can control my mind. That's an internal, okay, inside my squishy bits. Body is an external. What else is an external? Time, the future. Okay, I don't control what's going to happen in the future. Let's say you have what's a plan you have to do in a year, Sammi? A year or two from now?
I'd like to be working again. Not after being made redundant. I'd like a job again. I'd like to travel. I don't know how that's gonna pan out with this current situation, but that's what I mean. I don't know. I'm not a massive planner, to be honest. I think a lot of like staying in the present and things like that. Like, I'm quite an impulsive person. Like, I don't really plan much ahead. So yeah.
Okay, so we'll go with that example. You want to be working again, right? Which dozens of millions of people will agree with you. So working, what depends on you working? You work for someone else, so it's someone else, this company, the people working for that company, this virus that's running amok around the world. Is it going to go away? Is it going to stay? That's out of your control. The economy, how is it going to open up? That's out of your control. You might put on the best interview. Let's say you get called for an interview. You might like crush it. But maybe the guy that's interviewing you just had like the worst morning and he completely dismisses you. That's out of your control. You working again is 99.9999% out of your control. Okay, so this long-term goal is out of your control. Why worry about it so much? What you can control is your attitude and your thoughts and your decisions for actions right now. So you might say, I want to be working in a year from now, so I need a new skill set. Let me take some online courses and get a diploma in blah, 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 blah. That's in your control, and that's something you can do now. So you focus on that. Does it mean you're going to get a job? No, but it's something you can do to help you attain that objective. So the distinction of between goals, which is long-term, which we don't have control over, and effort is a huge distinction. And what I tell people always is don't judge yourself based on results, because results, whether you get that job, whether you're working again or not, is not in your control. Like, so many variables are in the universe's control, right? So look at the effort instead. Did you really do the best that you can to give yourself the best chances to have that job in a year? That's what you should focus on. Does that mean we should have no goals? Well, absolutely not, because, you know, goals are a good roadmap. But and this is a topic that I'm going over with my kids a lot these days. You know, cabin fever. They're getting like philosophy squared training, whatever. It's philosophy on steroids training. Anyways, I tell them, have a goal, have an objective. This is what we're going to do today. And I said, there's one thing you can be sure about. It's not going to happen the way you planned it. Plans never go according to the way you have imagined it in your mind. And the further out in time your plans are, the more deviations, not more likely it's going to deviate, but the more deviations you will have in your plans. So if you have a goal, a 5-year goal, great. You should have one to give you that kind of roadmap. But don't expect that things are going to change, or like things should. No. Know that it's going to change. There are going to be obstacles. There are going to be challenges. And what you have to do is, as soon as there's a change, you say, okay, we're pivoting, we're adapting. What's the new information? Let's take it in. Let's readjust our goal with the same target in mind and continue. And that's what we can control. And that's what we do. So for a Stoic, the effort is always in the present moment. It literally begins and ends in the present moment. And moment to moment, it's an end to itself. There are no worries about anything else. My biggest worry and anxiety in life is that I'm going to make bad decisions right now. And if I do, it's already gone. So I focus on the next one. It's already done. Let's move on. It's like a sports player, a football player. Like, okay, that play is gone. Let's focus on the next one. It is very, geez, I can't think of the English words now. It's freeing. Okay, it's freeing to not worry about all these things and just focus on your own effort in the present moment. And the practice behind Stoicism would be to focus more on that idea, because again, we're human beings. We have emotions. You know, we get like, I really wanted to do that. It's more to try and focus on that rational, intelligent, like, well, it's out of my control, that one. So pandemic, you know, whoopsie poopsie. So that's what the strengthening the prohairesis means. It's to be able to try and get to that level of clarity more often than not. So this way we don't get devastated over missed goals, because you never miss a goal, because goals are supposed to be flux and always moving.
Okay, brilliant. I'm conscious we're getting towards the end of the hour now, which time has flew by. Is there anything I've not asked or covered that you've wanted to say, or I mean, what's the main sort of points you want people to take from this podcast, and what are the sort of most important perils?
Sure. Again, you know, we tried to cover a lot in an hour. This is a philosophy that spanned 2 millennia. You know, so we've already covered the high level points. If Stoicism resonates with you, I highly recommend checking out some books. There's tons out there. Old style books can get heavy sometimes, but if you do get into it, they're really interesting. The other thing about Stoicism is, because we're so focused on kind of present moment, simplicity, straightforwardness, I grabbed these 2 books so you can see how thin they are. Okay. This is where over 50% of Stoic quotes come from. This is it. Like that. It's not like textbooks and textbooks and textbooks. It's more ideas on how you live your life today. Okay, Stoicism is about helping you find your purpose. Everyone has a unique purpose. It's about finding your purpose. It's about helping you live the best objective life that you can live. Stoicism has nothing to do with being emotionless or not caring. It has everything to do with just being as intelligent as we can while we live in these animal biosuits that are fatally flawed, and trying to find some happiness while we're here.
Okay, brilliant. I'll put links to your books and your podcast below, so people can learn more and things like that. But thank you so much for doing this. It's been a pleasure, and this has been really fascinating. So enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, that was cool. That was awesome. Thank you, Sammi.
You're very welcome. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.